Well, welcome once again. This is the Doctor of Digital, the Doctor of Digital podcast. The purpose of the show is to transform your business and life with education and inspiration. I introduce busy business leaders to trends in business, technology, and marketing to highlight people you should know. Do you know we witnessed the pinnacle of human potential at the Olympics? And is there more room for us mere mortals to push the boundaries of our physical prowess? Olympic records are constantly being shattered, but how much of this is due to training, advancements in technology, or nutrition? Some intriguing ideas of my guests suggest we might be able to improve human performance. My guest has devoted his life to ultimate human performance with 30 years of advanced training to qualify to make an Olympic team in track and field Decathlon event. This training and education has allowed him to understand how to help others eliminate pain and injury of virtually all muscle-skeletal issues and increase performance at all levels. Working with USA Navy SEALs and pro athletes and everyday people has helped him to create a methodology that far exceeds any other for advanced human performance. Finally, he is the author of the Joe Hippensteel Method. During this episode, we'll do a deep dive into the changes and hot topics of successfully transforming our bodies into the ultimate human performance. We will leverage the expertise of my guests and how to navigate the unique dynamics of the field. By the end of this episode, you'll be better equipped to know what to do, and I encourage you to contact my guest, Joe Hippensteel, CEO at Ultimate Human Performance, Inc. With that, I'd like to welcome Joe to the show. How you doing today, Joe?
Oh, fantastic, Mick. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with your great audience.
You bet. I couldn't wait to get you on the program because you're doing such important work. I'm wondering, doing what you have done, is there a pivotal moment to say, this is the area that I wanted to concentrate on? Because I'm willing to suspect you have a good story behind this.
Well, I kind of like the story. It's helped me get to this point. But, in my younger days, I was an athlete and I was in multiple sports. I loved athletics. It was my life. I went to college and played two sports. One of them was football. The other was track and field.
Okay.
And the football, I'm a fairly small guy. So the football kind of beat me up after a couple of years. And I decided I'm going to focus on track and field. I wanted to do what's called the Decathlon, which is 10 events in track and field, because it's the best all-around sport, which means you have to pole vault and throw the shot put and javelin,
Right.
long jump, high jump, running events, hurdles. So I thought, well, that's my best shot because I'm not genetically gifted enough. I'm not big. I'm not strong. I'm not have the genetics behind me. So I had to compete against bigger guys, but I thought this is my chance. This is what I wanted to do.
Right.
And the Olympics always fascinated me. So I said, okay, that's my mission. That's what I'm going to do. And I transferred from a small college in Pennsylvania, Division III college, to a Division I college in California. I said, that's it.
Wow.
I'm going to California. I'm going to train for the Olympics. So the people around me thought I was a little crazy, but you kind of have to go off on these missions and you got to find yourself and you got to follow your
Sure.
heart. And that's what I wanted. It was where my passion was. So that's what started me on my shall we say, 30-year trip to try and learn what it really takes to perform better when you don't have the genetics to do it.
Right. Yeah, and that appeals to a lot of people. I wanted to play basketball, but I'm only 6'2". I'm too short. I can't do it. So I can understand.
I would have loved to be 6'2". I'm 5'8", so I'm competing against guys who are about 6'3", average 195 pounds. I'm 155 pounds coming out of high school. So really, again, it's the lack of genetics to get to where a lot of professional athletes and some of the high level performance people, they can get there because of talent. And that's one of the things I try and emphasize in my book, which we'll talk about in a little while.
Sure. It's been a while now. I'm curious what has happened and some of the changes that you've seen over the last 30 years, because I think our view of the body has changed. So what would you say and identify some of the changes that you've seen over 30 years?
Yeah, it's a good question. The different fields within my field, which is physiology and kinesiology,
Yeah.
what they've done is they've increased the ability to understand what strength. I define it as 4 different pillars. There's strength, there's conditioning, there's cardio, and there's flexibility. Those are the 4 pillars of fitness. And if you can conquer those and maximize those, you're going to increase your performance.
Okay.
So strength and the conditioning and the cardio are the 3 that are dependent upon flexibility. And this is where people don't understand. They don't understand flexibility. They think yoga is good flexibility, or there's 100 different ways to stretch, but there's never been a standard that's been set. And if you don't have a full range of motion, you're going to be limited. You're going to have pain. You're going to have injury. And, what's interesting is all kids can do my ranges of motion. There's 24 ranges of motion that we've broken the body down into, that when you can do those, you don't hurt. And adults can't do that. So how do we get back to that? And when you talk to someone like a strength coach or a physical therapist, a doctorate degree, and they just don't understand that there has to be a standard. If you say, well, what's the standard range of motion for, let's say, shoulder extension, meaning you can lift your arms behind you, what should it be? And they say, well, there is no standard. I said, well, how can there not be a standard? Well, everybody's different. Well, of course they're different, but they're different in strength and endurance and cardio and everything else too, but you can improve that. So why can't you improve flexibility? Why can't there be a standard? Okay. These are not random standards. This is something that I learned over 20 plus years of training, very, very hard, very intensely, to try and understand what it's going to take me to get to that next level. And you have athletic training, you have strength conditioning, you have the doctors, you have chiropractors, you have massage, acupuncture, you have voodoo, all these different things that are they're doing their best to try and help you, but someone missed the point. And that's, if you don't have range of motion, the other stuff doesn't matter as much. But if you have range of motion, you don't need all the gadgets, all the things. There's so much equipment that they use in the athletic training room. If a group of athletes comes off their practice field and they sit on the massage table and they get some electric stim and they get some compression boots on their calves and all these different gadgets, bottom line is they should open their muscles back up so they can breathe again, so they can have range of motion. And that's what I discovered. That's the changes and the paradigm shift that I'm trying to teach to the world. And we're doing it at the highest level: Navy SEALs, professional athletes, and men and women from all walks of life. We have 10,000 people in 57 countries that are catching on to what we're doing. And a good analogy, just to help you understand the metaphor, is what we teach is allowing us I compare it to the Tin Man on the Wizard of Oz. He can't move. Yeah. And if you put oil in him, he can move. So how do you do that? You got to do slow, long, sustained static stretching to get to a certain point where your body can open, and then blood flows in and feeds the muscle once it's open. Otherwise, your body is walking around with frozen steaks. We have to defrost them. We got to get them usable again. And it's there's been resistance in what we teach only because stretching has a bad rep. And there's so many different kinds, and so many clients talk to me and they say, well, I've had a lack of discipline in my stretching. I haven't done a good job of it. And then they kind of smile as if it's some genetic joke, like, oh, well, I just wasn't blessed with flexibility. But they don't know what to do. We're now teaching what to do, and it's working at the highest level. We have saved over 400 Navy SEALs from surgery just by doing what we do. When you look at all the different ailments that are out there, from arthritis, bursitis, tendonitis, bulging disc, migraine headaches, carpal tunnel syndrome, fibromyalgia, restless leg syndrome, tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, plantar fasciitis, all these things are one thing: tension. If you follow our 24 ranges of motion and the protocol to get there, you can eliminate all those what they think are medical cases, and they aren't necessarily. They're just tension. We've conquered. One example: migraine headaches is a $42 billion industry in the United States. Research and treatment, $42 billion. We've done 100 cases and cured them all, and it takes between an hour and 3 days. It's a matter of understanding what muscles are choking which nerves, and then it goes away when we open that up. So that's kind of a long answer, but that's how what we have when you ask what has changed in my experience in this industry, it's really we're creating the change. It's a paradigm shift. You've got to have range of motion before you can gain the most in the other three, which is the strength, conditioning, cardio.
And,
Flexibility is the key. It's
and
foundation.
that sounds like what would be the hot topic to address, because what you're saying is that if I'm hearing you correctly, it's almost like you're reversing the aging process, right? Because we're
Exactly.
becoming children again. But you're right, children don't worry about these things. They have the range of motion.
Exactly, Mick. And I'm glad you brought that up. The fountain of youth is very real. Man has been searching for the fountain of youth for centuries.
Yeah,
And it comes down to three things. 60% of it, in my opinion, is you have to be able to move freely like a kid. They don't have any of those ailments I just named.
right.
If you have
Yep.
the ranges of motion, you can move freely, you're 60% and you're pain free. The other 20% and 20% is nutrition, which is the biochemistry of the body, and learning how to control your metabolism to calm your body down so that your immune system can work efficiently. So you have 60% flexibility to a standard, 20% the biochemistry of the body through nutrition, and 20% learning how to control your metabolism. For example, when you're awake all day long and you're, let's say for 16 hours a day, you're in hyper mode, you have your foot on the accelerator and you're pressing
Yep.
it all day long. If you take an EEG, electroencephalograph reading of the brainwave frequency, you're functioning at around 21 cycles per second, which is a pretty fast speed. When you meditate or sleep, it goes down to 10 cycles or less.
Hmm.
So your immune system, when you have your foot on the accelerator all day long for 16 hours,
Right.
your immune system can't work efficiently because it's so busy doing maintenance for the rest of the body.
Okay.
But when you slow things down and learn how to control your metabolism, we've taken pitchers the night before they're supposed to pitch, and they come up with a fever, they come up with a bad cold, and we've had them over it in 20 minutes by slowing everything down. It's like going into a deep sleep while you're awake, while you're
Hmm.
conscious. And so we teach the meditation, we teach the nutrition, but the mainstay is the 60% is getting flexible to a standard, and 20% of the population has natural flexibility. Those are the people that enjoy yoga. The other 80% of the people have to work at it, and we teach
Okay.
the exact protocol how to do that.
You have a really unique approach. You had mentioned your book. I'm wondering if you could tell us some of those groundbreaking ideas that you have in there, because it is a unique approach, and how you develop this. I'd be really curious if you could expand about that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. When I was in my training years, and I was training very intensely, between 6 and 10 hours a day, for off and on for 20 years, and I didn't have a sponsor. I didn't have some of the advantages of these talented athletes. People
Right.
helping them. I lived in a car for 2 years so that I could travel around to different universities and learn from different coaches. And I just trained and trained and trained. And if I'd have an injury, which I ended up having in those 20-year period, I had over 100 injuries. Literally, I'm not exaggerating. Pulled muscle. It's just every month you have a different pulled muscle. Your
Yep.
pec hurts from throwing the discus. Your hamstring hurts from sprinting. Your back hurts from landing the wrong way in the pole vault pit. So all these things, your body takes a beating. And I was training so intensely for so many years that my body took the brunt of my passion
Yeah.
and pursuit of trying to make an Olympic team without having the genetics. So bottom line is, when I'd have an injury and I go to the athletic trainer, I go to the strength coach, I go to the physical therapist, I go to the chiropractor, and it got to the point where all these injuries, they really didn't know what to do. They did a little bit. Chiropractor would help sometimes. The physical therapist would always focus on getting
Right.
stronger in that area. But if you have a muscle that's a pulled muscle, so to speak, it doesn't always work. And in fact, it very seldom works. And I just kept experimenting with getting stronger in certain areas, getting more flexible in certain areas, working my technique to make sure I'm efficient with my posture, my technique, etc. And I'll give you two examples.
Okay.
My shoulders got to the point where they were hurting so bad, torn rotator cuff, torn labrum. They said I had to have surgery or injections to kill the pain. And I didn't want to do that. No surgery, no injections. So I just kept experimenting, more strength work in the weight room, working on flexibility. And I found one day I was experimenting and I had my hand hooked to a cable behind me. And the higher that I raised, the more weight I put on the cable to raise my arms. When I got to 120 degrees with my shoulder extension,
Right.
my shoulder didn't hurt anymore. And I thought, well, how can that be? I have a torn labrum, I have torn rotator cuff, and I found out, well, it's when you're doing that stretch, it's mostly stretching the bicep because we're always working in front of ourselves, and meaning we're flexing the bicep. Nobody ever reaches behind themselves, and
Hmm.
so the further I reached behind myself up to 120 degrees, it just started stretching out the biceps. So I found the number one shoulder injury is not rotator cuff tear or labrum tear; it's bicep tendonitis. And the doctors will call it an impingement in the shoulder, and they may know the term bicep tendonitis, but they don't know what to do for it. You got to get to 120 degrees. Another example, when I was sprinting and I was at my peak, I pulled a hamstring muscle, and it was my left leg, my jumping leg. I jump off it for my long jump, for my high jump, etc. So I'm in the weight room 6 weeks before the Olympic trials. I'm trying to strengthen my hamstring. Well, if it's torn, I got to strengthen it. And the doctor confirmed it. The chiropractor confirmed it. The athletic trainer confirmed it. Yeah, it's torn for sure. And so I'm trying to strengthen it. It seemed to get worse, but at night it hurt so bad I would just massage it before I'd go to sleep. Try to
Hmm.
sleep, and the more I massaged it, the deeper I went, the more I could stretch it. It just felt like I was relieving something. I got to the point where I could put my nose on my knee with my leg straight, and the
Wow.
pain was gone. So I thought, wait a second, if it was torn, that's not
Sure.
stretching. Doesn't seem like it's going to help.
Right.
So I get the full flexibility to that standard, and it doesn't hurt anymore. So I have to figure, wait a second, there must be a kink in the muscle that I just learned how to get rid of. So I kept experimenting with the body till I found 24 ranges of motion eliminates all those problems, all the ones that I named before: migraine headaches, tennis elbow, fibromyalgia, all
Hmm.
those things that the doctors put labels on you and they call it aging. No, tension. When you get rid of it, you're in control. Empowerment. That's what it's about.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a really groundbreaking work in a lot of ways. And I'm curious about, it's, let's say a person is listening and hearing it and they say, well, Joe, I'm not a professional athlete. I just can't do that. But you really deal with a range of people that are sort of the ordinary people, and then some are maybe the weekend warrior type, and then the top performing people. Could you give some actionable tips for those various ranges of individuals you work with?
Yeah, for sure. And that's a great question. We've tested this and worked with the highest level, like you said, the Navy SEALs, professional athletes. But if it works for them, it's even easier for the people who aren't going that intensely with their training
Okay.
and with their lifestyle. So let's say you have an accountant or someone, a computer person that sits
Yeah.
all day long and they
Right.
want to run a marathon. So as soon as after done sitting for 8 hours, they throw on the running shoes and they pretend that they're stretching for about 1 minute, and then they go for a 10-mile run. You keep doing that and you're building up tension. So it's really a matter of integrating this into your lifestyle, into your training program. So if you're going to sit at a computer and you want to be a marathoner, a weekend warrior, as you said, you've got to be able to keep the tension away from the body while you're building tension during your workout.
Okay.
So stretching is something that should happen before your workout, during your workout if you can, whether it's weightlifting or whatever, or interval running, and then after your workout. Again, we're trying to neutralize tension to
Hmm.
maintain a certain range of motion.
Okay.
So following this protocol gives you an exact plan, 24 ranges of motion. You may only need 10 of them if you're doing lower body stuff. If you're doing upper body and you're a sport where you need more upper body, you have to do both. Um, so it's a matter of following our protocol, understanding the 24 ranges, and then integrating it into your lifestyle, whether you're high level performance or someone who plays golf on the weekend and you get golfer's elbow or tennis elbow. It's
Right.
a matter of stretching those types of muscles to our standard with our protocol, step by step.
That's really helpful. I think that's what will help a lot of people hear that. And knowing that it's actually for everyone and at different levels and high levels. And that's really what you're addressing. We've mentioned the book because we talked about some of the changes and topics that you're familiar with. How do we get a hold of the book? And yes, how do we get a hold of you? Because I think this is really helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah. I want to add one more thing that I'm going to tell
Okay.
you about the book. everybody hurts. Everybody.
Mm.
And whether they have migraine headaches or golfer's elbow or restless leg syndrome at night or bulging discs in their back, all these things again are just tension. So everybody hurts, and this is so helpful for everyone, whether they're an athlete or non-athlete, an executive, or a wife who has to, do the shopping and everything else for 4 kids and taking them to school, being the taxi driver, trying to run a career at the same time. So everyone has their tensions that they hold. Might be in their neck, might be in their shoulders, and again, these ranges of motion will help open that up. It's all explained in my book. My book is called The Joe Hippensteel Method. Here's a poster of it. And it goes through the whole protocol of what we do. I then have a website, ultimatehumanperformance.com.
Okay.
That's ultimatehumanperformance.com. Or if you look up Joe Hippensteel, you'll find the book on Amazon. We launched the book in December, and we hit bestseller status in 4 categories the first week. And we just now, this week, released the second edition, which is a little bit more condensed, a little bit better editing. I'm happy with it. And we're really starting to make a dent and help people with becoming pain-free, finding that fountain of youth, setting them on that mission.
It's something that everybody has been looking for a very long time. It's a century-old search, and I think you may have stumbled across some really insightful tips. Joe, thanks for so much for what you've been able to share and what you've been able to accomplish. And it seems like, well, it's only been 30 years, but to put it together in a very digestible and helpful way. So I appreciate your time and your expertise.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for what you're doing. You're inspiring a lot of people, educating a lot of people, and that's what it's about in life. It's a mission, and the more you learn, the more you can be inspired, the further you can go, and it becomes an empowering and enriching life. So thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Oh, you bet. Thanks, Joe. Take care. All right. So if you've learned as much as I have, hopefully that what you have is also going to tell us other people about the show. So we want to make sure that you like, subscribe, positively review, and share the Doctor of Digital podcast to keep guests like Joe who are inspiring us to do better every single day. I also want to thank the sponsors of both the publications Burning America and On Track, Ian Hunter, for their support for the program. Until next time, and keep the guests coming and all the support coming. I appreciate it. This is the Doctor of Digital signing off. Until next time, Deus Volt.